You're not an afterthought. You're certainly not a mistake. And your worth was never tied to what stayed or what left. Good morning. This episode is called Unspoken Goodbyes, the grief that no one talks about. So I know that loss that isn't always visible, but still changes everything. Miscarriage, divorce, estrangement, identity loss, unanswered prayers. So we're going to be talking a little bit about when loss makes you question your worth. Now remember, not all loss is visible, but it still reshapes how we see ourselves. And this episode speaks to the quiet grief, the hurtful words people say, the truth about how God sees your worth in the middle of loss. So let's just kind of dig in. Have you ever walked through a loss that no one really saw? No meal train, no long conversations, no space to fully fall apart. But inside, everything changed. And maybe it was a miscarriage, maybe a divorce, a relationship that ended without closure, a friendship that slowly faded, or even losing a version of yourself you thought would always be there. These are the kinds of losses that we don't always know how to talk about. So we don't. We carry them quietly. We minimize them. We tell ourselves it shouldn't hurt this much. But this is what I call unspoken goodbye. The kind that doesn't always have words, but leaves a mark on your heart. So, and here's where it gets a little bit deeper, guys. Loss like this doesn't just take something from you. It starts to change how you see you. You begin asking your questions like, was I not enough? Did I miss something? Why didn't this work out? Why would God allow this? That's a really big question. And without realizing it, you move from grieving the loss to questioning your worth. So let me ask you a question here. What loss have you been carrying that you've never fully given yourself permission to grieve? Just take a moment, get your notebook, start writing stuff out. Because when grief is ignored, it doesn't disappear. It turns inward. And then people try to help. And I believe most of them mean well, but sometimes what's said creates more distance than healing. Everything happens for a reason. God has a better plan. You'll be okay. At least it wasn't, and you can always. Any of those trigger something? Yeah, triggers me. And I want to say this carefully. Those words can feel like someone is trying to wrap your grief up quickly because they're uncomfortable sitting in it. But grief was never, ever meant to be rushed. Never. So have you ever noticed how quickly people try to move you past something that changed you deeply and how that makes you feel? And maybe your pain is too much for them? So what do? We stop talking. We stop sharing. And we shrink our grief to make others comfortable. And slowly, we begin to isolate. Not just from people, but from ourselves. And sometimes, even from God. But in scripture here, in Psalms 34:18, which is probably my most favorite one that I share all the time, is the Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed spirit. Near. Not waiting for you to get it together, not expecting you to have all the right words. He's saying near. In the confusion, in the anger, in the silence. God is not standing at a distance and saying, "Why are you still hurting?" He's sitting in it with you. He is sitting in it with you. So what if, instead of trying to figure out why this is happening, you allowed yourself to ask, "God, where are you in this?" Because somewhere along the way, loss starts to whisper lies. You weren't chosen. You weren't enough. You were replaceable, and you failed. Whew. And if we're not careful, we start believing them. But in Scripture, 49:16 says, "Behold, I have engraved you on the palms of my hand." Ephesians 2:10, "For we are his workmanship." You're not an afterthought. You're certainly not a mistake. And your worth was never tied to what stayed or what left. So let me ask you this. Where have you attached your worth to something that didn't last? A relationship? A role? A dream? And what would it look like to separate your identity from the outcome? Because losing something can feel like losing yourself. But it's not the end of who you are. It's the place where God begins to meet you in a deeper way. In Lamentations 3:22 through 23, the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. Romans 8:38 through 39, nothing will be able to separate us from the love of God. Not your loss, not your grief, and not your questions. He actually welcomes it. And if we're walking beside someone in this, let me gently guide you. Don't try to fix them. Don't rush them. Don't explain their pain. Just sit with them and say, I don't fully understand, but I'm here. Because presence is more powerful than perfect words. So if you're grieving right now, I want to give you something simple. Name what you lost, not just what others recognize, but what you feel. Because naming it is the first step to healing it. Some goodbyes are loud, but some, they're carried quietly. And just because they're unspoken doesn't mean they didn't shape you. So just please know that you're still worthy. You're still seen. And God has not stepped away from your story. He hasn't. This is Right Over Coffee. And this is Unspoken Goodbyes. And if this spoke to you, share it with someone who may be carrying the same something silently. And if you need someone to walk alongside you in your healing, you can reach out to elizabethkgreen.com. You don't have to do this alone, friend. And don't forget, on my website, you can also pick up a book of Unspoken Goodbyes. And it has these journal prompts in here, the same ones that I ask you to write out too. They're different in the book, but the same ones. Bye, guys.